How's it going, everyone? My name's John, and for those of you who don't know, I'm studying to get my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. And so, when it was announced that there would be a new counselor added to Persona 5 Royal, it immediately fascinated me. So today, I really want to talk about and pick apart whether or not this new counselor, Dr. Takuto Maruki, is actually any good at being a counselor. Now, to keep spoilers to an absolute minimum, since Persona 5 Royal hasn't actually been out that long yet, I'm only going to be looking at the first counseling session that we as players get to see right after the abusive PE teacher Kamoshida has already admitted to his crimes and kind of been dismissed from the school. So we'll be talking between him and Ann Takamaki. And so I really want to analyze what counseling methods and techniques he's using in this short clip and whether or not he's actually using them effectively and maybe what he could do better. So without further ado, let's just jump into the clip. Okay, okay, are here for a counseling session. So I'm honestly already going to stop here because I like how he's introducing everything. It sounds silly to point this out, but I think that giving this unconditional positive regard, making sure that the student or the client in this case, feels comfortable with actually coming in and talking about the issues. So him saying that it's always a good time so long as he's not already listening to a student is a great way to kick this off because it means his door's always open from now on so that she can talk and kind of building that rapport between the two of them immediately in a positive way. So let's keep going. Asking if can have a snack. And so it cuts here for a little bit. It looks like they might be chatting. They might just be sitting. But I'm just going to assume that right here, he is giving a statement of confidentiality. Because in the actual text, there's nothing about confidentiality stated, but this is so important as a counselor to give your client that statement of confidentiality. Because if you don't do that and the student tells you something that maybe you have to report to the school district or to their guardians or whatever else it might be, to the police, because maybe they're threatening to harm themselves or harm others, and that's something that you genuinely have to report. If you don't give this statement of confidentiality, then they won't know what they can and can't say, and that might feel like a betrayal of trust from the counselor to the student. And so within a counseling relationship, it is so important to have trust, because if there isn't trust there, there's no way that they're going to tell you what is bothering them. There's no way that they'll come back to you. And just in general, if you don't give this statement of confidentiality, you could land yourself in a lot of hot water if you do break this confidentiality. Because let's say you say something you're out at dinner, you're talking about a client or a student or whatever. Someone finds out that you break that confidentiality, then you could get fined by the government, by your counseling association. There's so many intricate and sticky situations that could land you in trouble due to a breach of confidentiality or an improper breach of confidentiality that you need to make this statement at the beginning of the session so that you and the client are on the same page. So we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt here that he said this just off screen because it's boring stuff. Okay, just wants her to relax. And he's saying that he's here to listen to whatever she wants to talk about. Again, it's all within that rapport building, trying to make sure that she feels comfortable in the situation. So, and she starts opening up right away. Okay. Yep, perfect sense. Okay. Okay. So, no. See, he had already said, okay, you're here, relax, feel free to tell me anything you want to talk about. And that was spectacular. I think that was great. She starts kind of opening up right from the get-go. Great. We know if you played Persona 5, she's a pretty headstrong character. So it's unsurprising that she's already willing to kind of open up to him in this way. But then he says this, don't force yourself into talking with me. It almost feels like he's backpedaling, and that could send some mixed signals to Ann in this situation. Because he's already said, feel free to open up, have some snacks. She starts opening up, and he goes, don't feel obligated to open up. You really don't have to. And that runs the risk. In this situation, it doesn't, but that runs the risk of the client, or Ann in this case, kind of withdrawing back into herself and taking that at face value, like, oh, I guess I don't have to share anything with you. So he saw that she was beginning to open up and still said this, and I think that that's just not a good move in terms of therapeutic practice, because why would you hammer home that they don't need to talk, if that makes sense? But we'll see kind of where we go from here. Okay, it doesn't deter her. It doesn't deter her from talking about what she needs to talk about. So that's good. That's good. He has strike one, but it didn't really affect anything. And so it looks like she's launching into the story. Take all the time you need. Back on track. He course corrected there. It looks like she completely opened up about the situation, and that's fantastic. And right after, she tells him about this whole awful story about all of the awful things that her teacher, Kamoshida, did, using her as leverage in a lot of different ways to hold her best friend's starting spot on the volleyball team over her head so that she would do him explicit favors, which is absolute scum and villainy, just like Dr. Maruki is saying here. Eventually, Kamoshida even made her best friend try to commit suicide, which is disgusting. So, I like that he's empathizing with her. He's showing that, okay, I know that the faculty of this school kind of let all of this stuff go up until now, and I'm not like that. I recognize that this is a horrible thing to do. All of these other teachers, they knew what was happening, they didn't do anything. But I'm saying right now, that's a horrible thing to do to someone. And so I like how he's allying himself with her in this particular context. And she mentions her friend Shiho. Okay, he did the and which is obviously him trying to get her to elaborate, but so I feel like this is so tried and tested in media that this is what counselors do, and we are genuinely taught to do this. It's called a minimal encourager, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's using minimal words to kind of push them to keep talking, to keep with that line of thought, and just to show that the counselor's listening to what they're saying. So those mm-hms, those yas, those okays, that and kind of is just nudging her to keep going, to keep sharing. So I love this. I think that's really funny. Let's keep going. So silence. She's kind of hesitating. And she's giving some of her deeper thoughts in regards to the situation. But Okay, so I know I'm laughing at weird stuff here, but him just saying but, because that's just him mirroring what she says. And the technique in terms of counseling is quite literally called mirroring. And again, it's like the and just trying to push her to keep talking a little bit without being too invasive with asking questions, because he can tell that she wants to say a little bit more, but she's hesitating. So that little dig, that little prying into her world is really good. Okay. I'm liking it now. I'm liking it. I was unconvinced at first. And she's continuing to open up. Okay. Okay. And now this compliment, when I first saw it, I wasn't sure how I felt about it, but I've come to really like it, because this is what I would call a genuine compliment, or a sincere compliment, okay? And sincere compliments are kind of dangerous territory, because if you give a lot of sincere compliments to try and build up the client or the student's self-esteem, then they almost fade into the background if you're constantly throwing it at them, kind of being that cheerleader character. But he only really gives one great compliment, this "you're a very wise, level-headed young woman." And that could really impact and give her a sense of autonomy and mastery in this context to really help her. So it's not like he's just throwing all of these compliments at her willy-nilly, because if he was, they'd start losing meaning really quickly. But because he's just sprinkling this in, that shows that he genuinely believes these things in context of what she's told him, which, again, I think it could help her kind of boost her morale and continue to establish this rapport and this level of trust between the two of them. She's a little taken aback by the compliment, which I think happens from time to time. Ooh, no. Okay, so here's... Okay. He was doing great up until this point. He had that little hiccup in the beginning that we kind of talked about that I didn't quite appreciate, but he was doing good. I don't appreciate this decision. And maybe that's just me, because self-disclosure as a counselor is always a tricky give and take. So no matter what you do as a counselor, you want to be very precise in what words you use, what you say, and how you say it. And so self-disclosure, kind of putting the lens onto yourself as opposed to onto the client, can work, but only in certain contexts. And as we kind of progress into this and you see her reaction to this, we'll kind of see that she doesn't appreciate him kind of saying, "Oh, you're so much wiser and more level-headed than I was at your age," because now he is forming a comparison between the two of them. It's almost like a competition now. And she, as anyone would say that, "Oh, no. I wouldn't say that," you know? And so it's almost creating an awkward atmosphere between the two of them. And it kind of takes away from some of the work that he'd just done. I feel like it almost erases that compliment that he just made to her, because she feels uncomfortable now. She's like, I'm not anything special in relation to that. I'm sure I'm not anything special compared to you. You're the counselor here. Like, if I'm wiser than you are at my age, I don't know. It could kind of get into their head a bit. And so I think that this kind of erases some of the good he just did, which I still have praise for that action in particular. But I don't know. I don't appreciate that. And then she goes into how if she didn't have such a rough life, she wouldn't be so mature. Okay, and now this is good. This is good. So asking her what's on her mind now. And that's really an important question to ask in regard to her mental state. Because, okay, we've kind of gotten past everything that's happened, the whole Kamoshida incident, we've talked about that, and her feelings regarding that. So where are you at now? And I like that it's an open question specifically. So the two types of questions being open questions, which are those open-ended questions, like an essay question on a test, where you have to write a bunch. You can't just get by with a yes or no, which is a closed question. Closed questions are those yes, no. So the fact that he's asking this open question means that she kind of has to elaborate on what she's thinking, what she's feeling in this particular context, where she's at right now. And so I think that this was kind of a good move. He's kind of got his ups and downs in terms of this. Where I'm at right now is he feels very much like a new counselor, which I believe, honestly, he is. And so a lot of this is to be expected. That question kind of caught her off guard, it seems. And her mind still, as one would expect, it's on her friend Shiho. And she completely dismisses the whole Kamoshida thing. Completely over it. And he tells her, okay, that's a healthy outlook. And then he summarizes. Summarization is a counselor's best friend because it reiterates kind of what the client had just said. So that you as the counselor can know if you are in the same headspace, if you're understanding what they're saying, so they can give yeah, that's the gist of it, or no, that's not exactly what I meant. So just to absolutely ensure that you are on the same page. And if you did get it right, that can kind of reframe it in their heads so that it confirms their thought processes. And so summarization, great technique as a counselor. And yep, sounds about right. So just confirming what he said is accurate. Better if none of this happened. Well, that's definitely true. And he agrees. He definitely agrees as well. And then kind of just closing out, just a brief, nice little exchange. It's conversational now, and sometimes it can definitely turn into this conversational kind of thing. And then, okay, he lost track of time, which, as a counselor, you should always wear a watch when you're in an appointment or have a clock within eyesight. But I always say wear a watch so that the client or the student can't constantly be checking the clock as well. But this is just unprofessional, and this is just kind of an amateur kind of mistake. Looking at your clock, or hearing the bell in this instance, saying, oh, we're out of time. We can't really close out super effectively. And the closing in any session is so important. I always like to give whomever I'm working with 5, maybe 10 minutes notice, saying we have about 10 minutes left, so that if there is something that they really want to share, in this context, it seems like just because of the progression of the story and the way the writers wrote it, seems like Ann pretty much got everything off her chest, and it wrapped up pretty well on its own by the time the bell rung. But in a real situation, maybe the entire appointment, she could have been holding on to something that she really wanted to blurt out, but just trying to find the right moment to bring it up. And so being surprised by it ending like that, now she has to hold on to that for a whole nother week or 2 weeks, or maybe she won't even go back, because it seems like, in context of the story, it's only mandatory to go see him once. And so that kind of gets into some sketchy territory, just in terms of that can be so easily avoided, you know? And so I think it's really just unprofessional in terms of this specific context. So let's see if there's anything else. Thanks for coming to see him. That's fine. That's dandy. Still not a great way to close up. But she says she feels a ton better now that that's all off her chest. And I'm glad that he does kind of tell her to stop by again anytime. Hopefully she did, but we just don't know that. It doesn't show that in context of the story. I don't think that she went back to see Dr. Maruki. But after looking through this whole kind of interaction, I want to give my overall thoughts of Dr. Maruki as a counselor. And it's kind of multifaceted, because he uses a lot of those, Counselor 101 techniques that I was telling you that everyone learns in a counseling program. First class, like that. Those open questions, those closed questions, the minimal encouragers, the mirroring, the summarizing. He uses all of those. He does it well. But there are also those the inappropriate comparisons, the self-disclosure that just didn't quite work, the stumbling over and even making the option of not opening up to him way too apparent, and him almost pushing that. I think that this just is the hallmark of an inexperienced counselor. So while I don't think by any means he's a bad counselor, he seems to be very, if I had to pinpoint, with it only being a 5-minute clip, I can't say for certain what kind of theoretical orientation he is. I would say that he is very Rogerian in nature. So that's Carl Rogers, that's unconditional positive regard. Him kind of being there for the student and giving that unconditional positive feedback, showing that he is on their side. And that tends to be what, from this situation in particular, I think he was more so leaning towards. But I think it shows that counseling seems like it's a new trick that he's just recently picked up. But as we're kind of revealed, if you don't want any spoilers, absolutely at all, skip past this little bit. But as it's kind of revealed in the story, he's much more interested in researching cognitive science, which science with a PSI, which is a huge story beat in this Persona 5 world. And so since he's much more interested in researching that as opposed to doing actual counseling, that's a completely different aspect of psychology. That would be as though a cognitive psychologist who really just likes researching how cognition works was to just immediately transfer to counseling. Research and counseling are two completely separate fields within kind of that overarching psychology umbrella. And so I think that it's a transition that can make sense, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be instantly phenomenal at it. And I think he's just kind of feeling it out in this context. This is probably one of the first counseling sessions that he personally has. And so overall, I think he did fine. I think he did well. He had a few blunders, but it didn't really affect the process. So how they were talking back and forth all too much. But those are just my opinions as someone who is studying to get their master's degree in counseling. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section down below. If you liked this video, you want to see more of this, maybe even me looking at his counseling sessions with the rest of the Phantom Thieves, tell me that too. And while you're down there, why not liking this video and subscribing to my channel? Maybe even ringing that notification bell if you're so inclined. As always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, a fantastic rest of your week, and heck, why not even a fantastic rest of your month, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great one. Later.